Start off with you. You say that in many ways this still represents, the assassination of Kennedy still represents the loss of innocence for America.
I believe that, Anderson. At the time, we'd come out of the Second World War, which was grim, of course, but the 1950s basically were very good years, very prosperous years. We were at peace, and there was a real sense of a transition moving from the oldest president ever elected at that time, Dwight Eisenhower, to the youngest, in a sense of hope. And I think it was such a shock. It shattered our sense of hope in the future. The nation has wept twice with slain presidents, first with Lincoln and then with Kennedy. With Lincoln, there was a sense that most of his work had been completed. But with Kennedy, there was this enormous sense his work was just starting. And therefore, suddenly we were faced with a world that was much more grisly and meaner. It was sort of been jungle-like. And of course, that was the dawn of years that came of tumult. When we have numerous assassinations and demonstrations and difficult times in the world. And I think that whole period represented a loss of innocence for the United States. We grew to be a more cynical, skeptical, suspicious nation.
Doug, for you, the legacy of JFK means what?
I agree. I mean, a lot of it's, well, what could have been? I mean, imagine 58,000 killed in Vietnam. Would Kennedy have gotten us into Vietnam? If you lost somebody there that you loved, that's a very big question. And also, I think this idea of putting the word with the Peace Corps, peace, into our lexicon. I mean, Barack Obama today was talking about the Peace Corps. That sort of lives on as his legacy. And finally, I think the space piece for John F. Kennedy is very big. He represented can-doism, and that's what our country so sorely needs. He didn't just say we're going to have a space flight program. He said we're going to go to the moon, and he gave us a date, and we did it. And so we're looking for an inspirational leader like Kennedy now, and we can't find one.
And John, you were there, obviously, in Dallas today for the memorial services. The city has spent the last 50 years grappling with how to handle their place in American history. Do you think it turned a page today in some ways?
It's certainly tried to turn a page, Anderson. I want to show you as we have the conversation. This is a replica of the Dallas Morning News tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, the day after the assassination, as it was in that day. Saturday, November 23rd, excuse me, not Wednesday. Kennedy is slain on a Dallas street. That on a Dallas street part was such a stain on this city. It was called the City of Hate for some time. There had never been an official commemoration or ceremony here or any of the anniversaries. So on this 50th anniversary, it was quite a short ceremony, a solemn ceremony, very respectful. The Kennedy family decided not to send anyone here, even though they did essentially give the nod for the ceremonies here today. And what you heard was not any retelling of the violence that played out right here in Dealey Plaza. Virtually none of that at all. Essentially, it was a tribute to the legacy of President Kennedy, to what you've just been talking about, the hopeful, inspirational, aspirational nature of his presidency. And on that grassy knoll, it's just about 40 yards this way over my right shoulder, where so many conspiracy theories are talked about. Now there is a plaque containing part of the speech the president was to give. He was on his way through Dealey Plaza to the Dallas Trade Mart to speak at a luncheon, and part of what he was to say in that speech is now forever inscribed here on the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza. The city reflecting today, Anderson, helps them turn that chapter. The theme today in Dallas was the city of love, Dallas love. For years, this was called the city of hate.
And David, I mean, you've also said, you talked about JFK's assassination, but also the Warren Commission. We're kind of opening up a new page of skepticism in the United States.
I think that's true, Anderson. It was hastily pulled together, and it was sort of sloppily done. And that led, as well as other things, the Jack Ruby killing of Lee Harvey Oswald was so stunning. How did he ever get through? And it just encouraged people to believe there must have been a fix in. They were trying to silence Lee Harvey Oswald before he ever said anything. And there have been conspiracy theories, of course, ever since about whether there were two shooters or not. Finally, I think after 50 years, there's a general consensus that Lee Harvey Oswald did this alone. Clint Hill, who was Mrs. Kennedy's Secret Service protector, tweeted today, 3 shots, 6th floor, 1 gun, 1 gunman. I was there, case closed.
Doug, CNN also released a poll today. It showed some 90% of Americans approve of the job Kennedy did. I mean, that's a remarkable number.
Unbelievable. And a lot of young people, people under 50, I thought it may have been people that remembered him, but it's when you teach like I do at a university, all students want to do papers on John F. Kennedy. He's going to always be the young, handsome, gallant president gunned down in his prime, and he used television so effectively, and his speeches are so eloquent that they're going to kind of live in an eternal way. Part of it is we forget he was part of that greatest generation, somebody who served in World War II and really believed that we could do things. He had a little bit of FDR in him in the sense of taking risk, but most of the risks he took, calculated ones, worked. He did just right in Berlin and just right in Cuba.
And also, I mean, the fact that, as others have said, that he will always be young. I mean, he is frozen in that age in our collective memory, and so there are those what ifs, and people can kind of put onto him whatever they want.
And a lot of color footage. We don't have Eisenhower's farewell was in black and white. You don't see a lot of Ike and Truman in color, but with Kennedy, as CNN's been playing it, there have been a lot of color photographs of Camelot.
Yeah.
I think Camelot's come alive on the 50th anniversary again. It was big with Schlesinger and Sorensen. Then it kind of had about womanizing and John F. Kennedy. I think on the 50th, people are remembering how much they love him. Hence, 90% of the American people give him a thumbs up.
Doug Brinkley, David Gergen, John King, thank you. Let us know what you think. You can follow me on Twitter at Anderson Cooper. Tweet us using hashtag AC360. Ahead tonight, more on the various investigations into the assassination. Why so many people still harbor doubts that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Cyril Wecht and Gerald Posner join us. Later, Air Force One's remarkable role in Dallas, seeing a new president sworn in, bringing a slain president home.
This interview was brought to you